Please be advised that Little Miss Recap contains adult language. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Little Miss Recap, the podcast where we don't have anything witty to say today.
Not so much. I don't know if either of us are wittiest. We'll get into it. I think our wittiness will improve with time.
Will our wittiness improve when we're discussing murder? Possible
Given
murder?
us, yes, possibly.
Guys, I'm Amy Archer, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Amanda. Hi, Amanda. Good morning. It's Sunday. We're here to talk murder.
We're here to talk murder. I jokingly said
true crime. We don't
true
know
crime.
If it's 100% murder.
Yeah, I jokingly said that I feel like Sunday mornings, our recording time has become our church. So for our church today, we're discussing the disappearance of a 15-year-old girl.
Oh my God, this show.
I loved it.
I want your opinion because I loved it. And of course, I heard through the grapevine that my twin, my soul sister, Jake Anthony, also loved it.
Well, I'm pretty much sure if Jake loves something, we're likely to love it. Yes, I loved it. I get where people say it was slow, because it was.
Yes, I get
but
that.
I actually thought it was beautiful, because so many of these
too.
documentaries are like bang, 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 bang. Another fact, another fact, another fact, another fact, that you're like, oh my God, what world am I living in? This was just very slow. I want to live in Steven's house, because that house is stunningly gorgeous.
Yes. He's, let's just get this out of the way. Not a holdie. I thought long and hard about it.
Yeah, no, he's not a holdie, but I like him a lot.
I think he has holdie potential.
He does. He could use a little spiffing up.
Yes. He is, I mean, I think the money in the house could help me get over the part.
Yeah, I want to know where he got all that money from, but clearly he's done well in life.
He's in finance.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah, so there we go.
There you go.
Okay. Full disclosure, guys, I am sniffly, snorty today. It is allergy season in Northeast Pennsylvania. There's nothing I can do about it. You're just gonna have to listen to me. I'll do my best to mute and blow my nose, deal with my snutzers, but they're here to stay.
Yeah. Right you have what I refer to as the snorfles.
I do.
Because it's more than sniffles.
Have you watched And Just Like That? And are you as enraged as I am?
Yes and yes. Yes and yes. I actually just finished listening to you and Leslie DJ talk about it. Like 20 minutes ago, I finished listening to you.
She made me feel a little better, but not great.
A little better, but not great. And I feel the worst I feel Miranda has been done the most dirty. And she's been done dirty hard, because she used to be such a cool, interesting character who you knew there was all this complexity underneath the surface, but she was very, like, for the most part, very measured in what she put out in the world and thoughtful. And this woman looks like she's, having a fit of some sort at any given moment that is so not who she is.
And everybody's like, oh, well, she's so, she's so type A that she deserves a break. And this is just her being off to No. We had that storyline already. That was when she met Steve.
Yeah.
That was the unusual thing that she did.
Steve was her departure.
Yes. Not this.
No. In her world, she should not have married a barely making it bar owner.
Right.
But she did. And she loved him, and they were great.
Yeah. Poor Steve. He's been done dirty, man.
He's been done dirty big time. Except I'm kind of hoping we don't see him this season, because in the first season, they made him be the dumbest, bumbling old person.
I know.
Who's my age.
I know. Like, are we all getting hip replacements once we hit 50? What's happening?
I don't know. They also made Harry really dumb and bumbling too, and I'm like, that's not Harry.
You heard my theory about the problem with it is it's Encino Man for me.
Yes. That is, when you said that, I was like, that's exactly what it is. It's like they put these women to sleep for 30 years, woke them up, not even 30, 15 years, woke them up, and were like, now go exist in this world. And I totally agreed what you said with Charlotte not knowing how to deal with Rox coming out. I feel like that's a very legit
that's legit
parenting story. And you could see they wrote it really well. Charlotte wants to do the right thing. She just doesn't know what it is. She's trying. and she seems to have
Yes.
gotten there, which is great.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so I can completely appreciate that. I'm really curious what they're gonna do with Lily, because I think, you know,
Me
this will
too.
be interesting because Lily's clearly like, "Yeah, this world we live in is bullshit." Um,
Yep. And
which
it's
feels like the
very
most
like
teenagery, angsty thing to happen anyway. Like, I like that felt real too.
yes, I agree with you. And also the money is a problem for me. Like these people
Yeah.
are so out of touch.
Yeah.
I don't understand what's happening. Like it used to be that Charlotte's world was kind of out of touch,
Right,
but
but
now
Carrie
everybody's
lived
is.
yeah, Carrie lived in a real world even though she was but sh and if she lived so much in a real world that she was broke as hell and still buying $400 shoes, because
Yes.
that's what 20-year-olds do,
Yes. Yes.
and even early 30-year-olds. But
Not
now
this
she's got
30-year-old. I was buying, Easy
yeah.
Spirits at TJ
Yes.
Maxx.
I was buying stuff at, oh god, what was that shoe store that was super cheap?
Fabulous Footwear,
No,
Pickway.
no,
Not Pickway.
Payless.
What
Payless.
Payless thing? Pickway became Payless.
Oh, did it? Okay, Payless,
Yes.
yeah. I
Okay.
was buying a lot
All
of
right.
Payless because I have big feet too, so
Okay. All right. So anyway, a stinker of a season so far. Let's hope it
uh,
gets better.
I'm
I
still
was
gonna
happy
watch
to
it.
record with Leslie DJ. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm still
yeah,
gonna watch it.
great conversation.
Mhm.
I agree with most of your takes on the whole thing. But yes, I will hate watch it because I have to.
I will too. I
Because
will
I
too.
have to.
And we
And
appreciate your service.
yeah, thank you. I'm here to do my service. And I, like you and like everybody on the planet, thinks we should just forget the second movie ever happened
Yeah, I don't
because
even
that was one of the
remember,
most
and I will
offensive
not
things.
allow myself to remember any
Don't
of it.
remember. Anything I remember is
Mm-mm.
not good. Don't remember anything.
From what Leslie intimated, I guess Aiden was in it. I didn't even know that. I
Yeah,
forgot
he
about it.
he showed up
Mhm.
in it. They ran into each other in like a market of some sort. I think they
In
were in Abu
Mumbai? In Mumbai?
No, they were in Abu Dhabi. They
Oh.
were somewhere in the Middle East, like Abu
Oh, okay.
Dhabi, Doha, one of
They ran
those.
into Aiden there?
Yes,
Oh, that's plausible. Okay.
of
Yeah.
course they did.
Okay. All
So
right.
dumb.
So let's talk about what we're here to talk about today. I'm so glad that
Yes.
you loved this. I thought the style was amazing.
Yeah, and
The
you could tell
recreations I didn't hate.
I didn't hate either. They were a little cheesy, but they were not so bad, and I also could really see it because she was 15 in 1987. I was 13 in 1987. So, we
Mhm.
were not dissimilar in age.
I was
My
10.
room did not look dissimilar from hers. Like, I could really see myself in that place. So, when they did the reenactments, I was like, "That's what we looked like. That's how we dressed.
There
That's"
was a lot of Gen X stuff in this,
Yes.
which we'll get to. But
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
I
All right,
and
so here's what I have. So we're talking about Burden of Proof. It's on Max Streaming. 2023 it came out. I took a bunch of notes here. I tried to build cases, but here's what I'm thinking we need to answer.
Okay.
No matter what, and I asked you to come up with what your theory was, and I
Mhm.
came up with what my theory was. No, I think there's 3 or 4 plausible scenarios, but each time I present them, the note hangs me up.
Yeah, the
The
note
note is the thing that we need to figure out. We need to
who
solve
wrote
this
that note?
case.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I don't know if we can, like
Bite your tongue. We're gonna solve this.
okay, okay. I am willing to go on this journey with you. Yeah, it's the note and the mother that trip me up
Okay,
every time.
I agree. I agree.
It's Margie, she trips me up. Her reaction to all of this feels so not normal.
My mother and I got into a fight about the mother.
Yeah, so tell me about this
Very
fight.
meta, very meta.
Yes.
I've had an evolution on
Okay.
Margie, and
Okay.
my mother hates her.
Okay. Okay. I
Okay,
don't know if
and
I hate her, but there's something
I
going on
don't
here.
s and I'm trying to explain to my mother, like, I feel to understand Margie, you have to come at her through the lens of a battered woman,
Agreed.
and
Otherwise, nothing makes sense.
luckily, my mother has trouble with that perspective, she's never been in that place,
Yes, thank God.
but I think that you can't rule that out,
No. No.
and you have to think that if the parents are to blame, that Ron was the looming force over everything.
Yeah,
And
Ron,
if he was saying to her, "Do not call the cops, do not do this, do not do that," she was listening.
she was. She was. And it's
Bottom
easy for
line.
us to sit here 33 years later, 34 years later and go, "Oh, well, we would do it differently."
Right.
But we weren't living in her world.
We weren't living in her world. It seemed like she didn't have a ton of support. It seemed
Yeah.
like, because she does have a family, but it seems like they don't live locally, like they're not around. And the thing about the mother, the one redeeming thing about her in my eyes was that she literally jumped through every hoop that Steven put in front of her,
She did. She
including
did
being
everything.
hypnotized
Yes, she did everything that was asked of her. Though I was waiting
without
for the
hesitation.
without hesitation, though, the hypnotizing thing was also making me think of Love and Death and Candy's hypnotism, but
Yes, yes, yes. Do
I
you
would like
need
to be
me to go into
hypnotized.
my voices? Are we going to start doing that? All right.
Maybe,
So
maybe. O only if we could talk
let's
about sex, crimes, crime, sex. Sex, crimes, crime, sex.
sex crimes, crime sex. Guys, if you're if you're not listening to Love and Death, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Steph and I went to dinner last night and we were talking about we need our next show.
Yes.
And we're like, it needs to be something we can make fun of. And I'm like, but on the surface, Love and Death shouldn't be something we're making fun of.
No,
Like, it's a
no,
murder mystery.
it's a sad story and it's really well
Yes.
done, but you guys
Yes.
nailed the making fun of.
Oh
I cackle
God.
every
I don't
time.
know. All right, so here's a list of the main players. We have Stephen Pandos. He is the main character. He is the one who has hired this film crew. Well, he reached out to this film crew. He's, asking them to make this documentary, telling his story. He's been on a quest for 10 years at this point to figure out what has happened to his family,
How do you
to his
feel about
sister.
Steven?
Um, I don't know. I like him. I feel sorry for him. I think he's doing the right thing. And I think he's very open. When
Mhm.
he's talking at the end about like this could be the worst thing I've ever done and I've just made a terrible situation worse.
Yeah.
Like that was really vulnerable.
Mhm.
But there is a rumor going around on Reddit, which I went down the Reddit
Oh
rabbit
boy.
holes,
Okay.
that he was not a nice guy and he was like abusive as well. Now, Steven is not implicated in this in any way. He was away at
Nope.
school. That is 100% true. He was not
Yep.
in the house, not in
Nope.
town. He was
Nope.
away.
Yeah, I think he was at UN I think
Um,
he went to UNC, I think. But yeah, so he was nowhere to be found.
right, but if like a young man in the 80s who grew up with an abusive father was abusive or angry, I get that. That
I
makes
get that
sense to
too.
me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think he's that person now.
I don't think so either. I just felt so sad for him.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
just this like sadness and just pit of pain in him not
Yes.
knowing what happened to his sister, and I think there's a lot of guilt too because
Yes.
I think he's like, if I hadn't gone to college, if
Mhm.
I hadn't
Mhm.
left, they were never close growing up. So it's interesting that he is so dedicated to figuring out who she is or what happened to her, not who she is, what happened to her. Um,
I think
and
there's
I
a
think on
little
some
bit of
level who
him
she
who
is,
also
because
wants to find out who she
yeah,
was. Yes.
yeah, because they
Mhm.
weren't close, and I don't know. He just made me sad. His house was
Yeah.
beautiful. His daughters were gorgeous. His new wife seems lovely, and she's got the patience of Job.
Who did his new wife remind you of?
She reminded me of somebody,
Do you
someone
watch
in the
Succession?
90s. No.
Oh, okay. She reminded me of Connor Roy's wife.
Okay. Got
Looks
it.
just like her.
Got it.
All right. So we have Jennifer Pandos, who's 15. We have Margie and Ron Pandos, who are her parents.
Mhm.
Divorced now, but married then. We have Wendy Reed, a cold case investigator who worked the case when they reopened it in 2006. We have Corey and Tony Tobler, friend and ex-boyfriend.
Yeah. Yeah,
We
we'll talk a
have
lot about them.
Carrie Hendricks, an older man they used to babysit for, that Jennifer used to babysit for. And then we have Karen, Stevens' soon to be wife, and then later I'll get into it, a couple more people pop up.
Okay.
Okay. I loved the opening. So here's what they did with the opening if you haven't watched it, guys, which I
I highly
I'm
recommend it.
imploring you to watch. They have her riding they have an actress reenacting her riding her scooter through the development where they live,
Mhm.
and as these different voices come in and they're misremembering her and like contrasting what they're
Yep.
saying, contradicting what each other's saying, the image of her changes.
Mhm.
So she's like riding a scooter, and somebody's like, "Oh, she rode this scooter," and then somebody's like, "I don't remember her having a scooter. I think she walked everywhere." And then they show her walking. Like it
Yeah,
was
I thought it was
great. It
really
was really
cool.
good, and it kind of speaks to like I love things like that because it kind of speaks to like the fragility of memory
Right,
and like
exactly.
what
This
we
is
remember
34
about
years
people.
ago. I
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I could go through who my best friend was in 1987, and the things I remember about him probably aren't entirely accurate.
No, I agree. So we're introduced to Steven. He's mega rich, like we said. And he says in 2014, he tried to sue his parents for the death of his sister, not for money, but for a judge to just say, yes, they did it.
Mhm.
And the documentary picks up in 2016. It was filmed over 8 years.
I love the relationship that, Cynthia Hill, who's the documentarian, and
Mm-hmm.
Steven seem to have.
Yes.
She's just as dedicated to this story as he is, and I
Mm-hmm.
think she does a nice job of clearly having a lot of compassion for him and not involving
I
herself
agree.
in the story. Because after 8
I
years, it'd be
agree.
really easy to start getting yourself in the story, whether you mean to or not.
Yes, I agree. So here's the facts of the case, okay? Jennifer was reported missing in February of 1987 while Stephen was at college. Jennifer was 15 years old. Now, Margie, the mother,
Mhm.
says on February 9th, 1987, she went into Jen's room, asked her to call her grandmother and pick up her room. Jennifer said okay. The next morning, Margie woke up and didn't hear Jennifer in the shower like she usually did, so she thought she overslept.
Mhm.
Her bedroom door was locked. She calls Ron, the dad. Now, they did Ron dirty in this. Okay? Like Ron has he's a problematic person, okay?
Yes,
But we'll
for
talk
sure.
about him. But the actor was almost like a Nick Tortelli looking guy, current references only.
Yes,
And
yes.
he was super pissed off and he comes down in the reenactment and his hair's all messy and he's like, "What the fuck? What's going
Yeah,
on?"
she's looking like an angry,
It was
bumbling idiot.
hilarious.
It was
Yes,
bad,
it was
yeah.
hilarious. So they break into her room essentially and she's not there and there's this note at the foot of her
Mhm.
bed and everything revolves around the note.
The note.
So
Whoever
Margie
wrote the note tells you what happened.
yeah, Margie tells us that this is where her world ended, right there.
Mhm.
They live in a gated community and people have to call the residents to come in and out. Okay? But they say she could have walked. And
Mhm.
then Margie says Ron filed a missing persons report a few days later. It was a
Yeah.
big thing. She says she said the police seemed not to care and that she and Ron would sit at night on the stairs and just watch the parking lot or sit by the phone and wait.
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
I don't either. I
Because
don't
she says
believe a lot
later
of their recounting of what happened in those days.
that Ron used to go on his nightly excursions, whatever the hell
Mhm.
that means. So Margie says Stephen has made it his mission to convict his father, and that's fine if Ron did it, but I don't know that. And then she said she has met her grandchildren, but they've been out of her life for a very long time.
Mhm.
And Stephen has also cut her out of his life. And I made a note here that Margie has a very soothing voice.
She does. She's a very soothing way about her.
I agree.
Yeah.
So here's what Steven believes happened when we meet
Mhm.
him. He believes that on that night, February 9th, Ron came home, had an argument with Jennifer over her being on the phone. He hit her or pushed her. She fell back, hit her head, and died. He then involved Margie in it, who helped him get the body out of the house, wrote the runaway note, and that was it. Now, there's a whole host of evidence as to why he believes this, and
Mhm.
that's what I'm going to lay out now.
Yeah, and going through it, I was like, yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, he sold it really well.
And this is why I told everybody, I know it's slow, but hang in because it takes a
Yeah,
turn.
it
It
does, big
takes a
time.
turn. And you start to quite like we still don't know.
Mm-mm.
Anyway, So Sharon, the friend Jennifer was on the phone with that night, okay? She says what she heard between Ron and Jennifer was particularly nasty.
Yeah.
Jennifer was like, "Okay, Ronald, I'm getting off the phone," which
Right.
from a parent of a teenager, I hear, I feel it, I hear it. Okay,
I went through a period where I kept trying to call my mother by her first name, and she was like,
no,
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 no, only
mm-mm,
one
mm-mm,
person on the planet gets to call me mom, and that's you,
mhm.
and so you're gonna continue doing that." I was like, "Fine."
When I first met Timmy, he was trying to call his mother Carol,
Oh
and I said to
gosh.
him, "I literally will not date you if I hear you call your mother that again. No
Wow.
way.
Wow.
I'm not into it. Not into it."
Okay.
So we learned that Ron was a combat vet from Vietnam, and he has severe and untreated PTSD that he
Yeah.
never addressed, and he's abusive. And,
Like
Steven's leaving like left her vulnerable to him. So according to
mhm.
Steven, Ron abused them
Yep.
regularly.
Yep. Which
And
I buy. I completely buy.
I buy that too. I mean, we grew up, I'm sure I could speak for you as well. We grew up in a time
Mhm.
where Vietnam vets were very present in our lives.
Yep. Yep.
And I mean, this I could go down the Vietnam rabbit hole real easy because I'm
Mhm.
obsessed with it, but it
Yeah.
was a gruesome war that
It
just
was.
destroyed everybody who went there.
And it destroyed
And
a whole
the fact that
generation
he
of men
yes,
who
it
were
did,
there.
and the fact that he has PTSD breaks my heart for him because I
Mhm.
can't even imagine what this man has been through, and it's his one kind of redeeming quality throughout this whole thing. You know what I
I
mean? Like,
can
his
give him
behavior is abysmal, but
I can give him
yes.
empathy because of that.
Mhm. Me too. Steven says something interesting here. He says, "My mother never protected us,
Mm,
and she was a victim also."
yeah,
So,
it's so
mom
interesting when there's an abusive person in the house, how everyone else moves around that person and how
Oh,
everyone else
yeah.
deals with it.
Oh,
And you
yeah,
really learn a code of behavior to
it's a
work
code of
around this person.
secrecy.
Oh, yeah,
It's a
big time.
code of secrecy. It's a
Yep.
code of behavior, 100%, and it's so funny because, I'm familiar with this. I have quite a few friends who grew up in this similar circumstances, and it's like you're trying to control the uncontrollable.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? You're
Mhm.
hanging on so tight to try to
Mhm.
control what's happening in the house, but it's not able to be controlled. So
No,
it's just
yeah,
futile.
and not at this level because there wasn't any physical abuse, but my mother's sister lived with us for years, and she has passed since, so I don't feel like she's going to be offended by this because 'cause she's been dead for 15 years, but she was
She may haunt
horribly
you.
abusive to me. She may haunt me, it's true. She
Mhm.
was abusive to me, and watching some of this, I was reminded of just how households operate
Mhm.
around that, and my experience of her is very different than my mother's, though once I went off to college, my aunt started picking on my mother because I
Oh,
wasn't there
okay.
anymore. Like, it's a bit like, a lot of that I really identified with of,
Yes.
"Oh, yeah, this is how these things change in a family as people go in and
Yes.
out."
Yes, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. So Steven says that, mom waited a few days to call him after Jennifer's disappearance, and she was super calm.
Yeah.
He says they waited to call the police, and that was super weird. And, we do hear like Margie's reasoning for that is that they were paying attention to what was in the note. And I will read the note in a few
Yep.
minutes. So it had very specific instructions.
It did.
Uh, the police believe that Margie and Ron did this and no
Mhm.
more than. So if you're Steven and the police are telling you, we believe this, you're going
Right.
to believe it.
Absolutely.
Margie seems to be withholding evidence. She produces the letter and some dental records, all of which the police believe were in the original case file, which went missing. This
Right.
is a
Now
whole thing.
yeah, that's
So,
another weird thing about this.
mhm. So in 2006, when this case is reopened, Wendy Reed is the investigator. She reopens it. She goes to get the original case file, which would have had all the interviews, all the
Mhm.
evidence they had at that point. It's gone.
Missing.
It's gone. Hmm.
And they
So,
searched they made a point to say they searched the evidence room 3 times for it.
yep, yep, 3 times. Put
Mhm.
that in your back pocket. So they're like, well, clearly Margie has access to it because she's giving us evidence that should have been in the original case file.
Right.
So now we see there's this conspiracy that Ron has it. Ron has the original case file. That's what we
Mhm.
hear. Okay. Ron told Wendy Reed that he went to school in the aftermath. He went to Jennifer's school in the aftermath of her disappearance and hung up flyers and talked to her friends, but Wendy could not find anyone to corroborate this. Still
I
can't, I
I
don't
believe
think.
that.
I believe that as well. Ron says he got in his car and went up to PA. Shout out to Pennsylvania.
I know, I was like, "Where are you going in
Mhm.
PA, Mr. Pandos?"
Mhm. Mhm.
In my
To
brain,
tell
he's
his
going to where you live. I don't know why, but in my brain, he's going to
No, in my
Northeast
brain
Pennsylvania.
he was going to Pittsburgh.
Ah, okay.
I don't
Okay,
know why. I don't
okay.
know why.
I don't know why either, but
Which wouldn't make sense if he's coming from Virginia. It's only a couple hour drive. It would probably be where I live.
yeah.
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 So Ron says he went up to PA to tell his mother Jennifer had run away. We later learned his family did not know for years,
Years.
including grandma.
How do you hide that for years?
Well, here's the thing that stuck me. If my kids were missing and I didn't tell my mother, she would find out because she has her own relationship with them
Right.
and would have at some point tried to reach them or
Right.
come down here to see them.
And wouldn't the first person one of the first people you call be, like, Jenny? Because if the girls are pissed and they wanna get out, they might very well go to their aunt's house. Like,
They're not going to
it's
Jenny's house.
but you know what I'm saying? Like, that
Yes.
that would be the first thing I'd
I
call, like, if my
understand what you're saying.
yeah, if my kid got pissed at me, the first one of the first people I'd call would be, like, my best friend. Like, you might call Steph and be like, "The girls might be
Yes.
showing up on
Yes.
your porch because 'cause they're pissed."
Yes. Yes.
But
Agreed
to
100%.
but to not tell
Nope.
anybody.
Nope. And I think it says a lot about that family's relationship with Jennifer and Steven.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They
And when
didn't have one.
later when Steven sees them, it is kind of like he's seeing them for the first time in 2 decades.
Yeah, this does not feel like close family.
Mm-mm. Nope. So then they say that the parents went right to work because they followed what the note said. But the note also said to put money in Jennifer's account, and they didn't do that. So they did
Right,
some things the note said and some things the note
but
didn't
not
say.
other things. Like,
Hmm.
if their story is going to be they just followed the note to a T because they were afraid of what might happen if they didn't, why don't you do the big one, which is put some money in her account?
Yeah. Yeah. Ron and Margie both failed polygraphs.
Mhm.
And I don't know why I have this written down as a point of evidence, but Ron is an accountant and it was February, so he was busy. Guys, don't piss off pro tip, don't piss off an accountant in like
In
March.
Q1, in Q1 of the year, you be nice to accountants because it's not fun for them.
Almost everyone thinks Margie and Ron know more than they're saying. There's times where Margie has never called the investigators back.
There's
Um,
she called him 7 times, and instead of answering the phone, she emailed Ron.
yes. Yep.
Ugh.
Ron, on the other hand, called them often. Wendy said almost as if he was inserting himself in the case, which
Mhm.
is, we know that's a common thing. They also say weirdly specific hypothetical things like Margie said Jennifer could be in the woods or the river or the railroad tracks.
Right.
And Ron says, hypothetically, what if I hit her and she hit her head and I accidentally killed her? There were cadaver dogs that don't get me started on cadaver dogs. I feel like they're so useless. We never see them hit anything. I don't They supposedly picked up a scent in the crawl space under the house, but found nothing. And then Ron and Margie moved and never called the police and updated their address. And then in 2009, they offer Margie immunity. This is important on everything
Mhm.
except homicide. And she
Yep.
still will tell them nothing. So that
What
this is what we come into this with. This is what Steven is looking at. And you
Right.
can see from his point of view, you're like, these people are fucking guilty.
Oh, I was hook, line, and sinker sold that they did this.
Mm-hmm.
If the
Mm-hmm.
theory if the theory holds true that Ron hit her or pushed her or something,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
she fell and hit her head, why is
Mm-hmm.
there no blood?
Right.
Why
Right.
is there no blood?
Why is there I'll reveal my theory at the end, and then
Okay.
you can shoot it down using the letter, and then I'll
Okay.
change my theory, and then you can shoot down again using the letter. Because
Okay.
this is what my week has been on the phone with my mother. Okay. So
I love it.
now Wendy Reed comes into it. And again, like I said, she picked up the case in 2006 where the original case file was missing. So they had no idea. They had to start over on this case. So she interviews a bunch of people, including Jennifer's friend, including the Toblers,
Yes.
Tony
Let's
and
talk about the
Corey.
Toblers.
So Tony says that Jennifer went missing in February 1987 and they had stopped dating the summer prior. So
Mhm.
1986. Corey says Jennifer had no fear and I just assumed she had left with someone. And Tony's like, oh, yeah, it's just like her to run off and think I could do that. And she did. Okay.
I don't believe she ran off.
I don't either.
That
Corey
because she would have
also,
popped up by now.
I agree. Corey also pointed Wendy Reed in the direction of Carrie Hendricks. She was like, there
Mhm.
was this dude we used to babysit for. He bought us alcohol, which was totally a Gen X thing.
Yeah. And
And
I loved how she's like, "At the time, I thought it was awesome, but now looking back on it, I'm like, what the hell were they doing?" Yes, yes, that is
and
exactly how you would feel about it.
and this dude has a record. And Wendy's like, well, we weren't able to locate him, so oh well.
Yeah. Whatevs.
Whatever. It's done. Now we will come back to the Toblers because I
Mhm.
have a lot to say about them.
Agreed.
But right now I want to read you the letter.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm
so
ready.
let's break this down. Here's the letter that was found at the end of Jennifer's bed, supposedly.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. and Mrs. Pandos. Already weird, right? Mr. and Mrs.
Right,
Pandos. Okay.
right.
Mr. and Mrs. Pandos. Your daughter is with me. She is fine. She's having some problems though. She needs some time away from this place. 3 to 5 days max. She is like a daughter to me, and I'm like a dad to her. Here are some of Jennifer's quotes. I'm fine. I just need time to think. Both of you, please go to work tomorrow because I will try to call you. I won't call at home, only at one of y'all's work. Cancel my doctor's appointment on Friday. Please put money into my bank account. Do not call the police. I can easily find out if you do, and if you do, I may never come back home. Don't tell my, and something is scratched out, friends about this. Just tell them I'm sick. Please do what I've asked. That's it. That's the note.
Mhm.
Now, I've inspected this note.
Talk to me, Goose.
And the word that is scratched out after don't tell, it says don't tell, and then the word ARE is scratched out, and
Mhm.
then says my friends about this.
Hmm.
Could this be somebody her age misspelling OUR?
Could
Don't
very
tell
well
our
be.
friends about this. Don't tell our friends about this.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, it could very well be. And
Mm-hmm.
the person who
Mm-hmm.
could have said that doesn't strike me as the brightest bulb on the tree, who could very easily have
Correct.
not known the difference between R and R.
Correct. Again, grammar could solve this case.
Grammar.
Okay.
I knew all those years of diagramming sentences would come in handy one day.
So now we meet Donnie Norrell and Bruce White. Donnie is a private investigator who worked homicide for Norfolk, the mean streets of Norfolk.
Norfolk. Dong dong.
And the people, they believe the parents are very strong suspects. Again, because they're getting the evidence we're getting.
Right, and it
And they're all like, mm.
how strangely they behaved after all of this. I yeah, it seems so obvious that her father did this, and her mother knows what
So
happened.
obvious. So obvious.
Yeah.
So now we meet Kenneth Morris. He's a profiler, a criminal profiler who was called in when they reopened the case in 2006. He is not a handwriting expert. I just want to say that again, not a
Yeah.
handwriting expert. He read the note and he concluded that the note was written by someone who knows her very well. And he kind of laughs at it and is like, this is like a Nancy Drew level crime. Like, this is
Mhm.
real, real bad.
Yeah.
And he says, this note was written to delay the crime scene and it's consistent with staging. There was no ransom, which was
Yep.
weird. And he concludes that Jennifer had nothing to do with the letter because of the awkward wording and quotes. I don't agree with that, but we'll
I
get
don't
to it.
yeah.
You take one look at that note and you're like, oh, someone just wrote it with their non dominant hand.
Yeah, that's
Like,
what my handwriting looks like,
yeah,
should I try to write
yeah,
with my left hand.
yes.
Real one thing as we go through all of these experts and all
Hmm.
these people
Go
that
ahead,
Steven
go.
brought in, I wanna know how much money he has spent on this.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
I and that just breaks my heart too. Even though
Yeah.
he clearly has it to spend, like, that's
Yeah.
heartbreaking too.
Yeah.
Spend all of this energy and money and, ugh.
I mean, he could have downgraded those countertops in his house and paid for this entire thing.
That's
Yeah.
true, but he had
Oh,
to have the Carrera marble.
right, he could have went to Home Depot and got those prefab countertops.
Like
We
the
would have
rest
been
of us
good.
do.
So, he also says since the friends did not know of this father figure that's mentioned, it had to have been a stage scene, which leaves the parents. And then they send the note for analysis, and Jennifer and Ron were ruled out, and Margie was not eliminated.
Mhm.
Okay.
I wanna go to a handwriting analysis person. I wanna know what my handwriting
I
means.
want to see if I could like fuck with one, like
Yeah,
try to write. Donnie, the private investigator, believes that this note is the key to solving the case, and I believe it. You
I
find who wrote
agree.
that note, like you said, you find the killer
Yep.
or the
The
murderer,
per
the
you
abductor,
find
whatever.
whoever was
Yes.
responsible for this.
He says it's so weird that the original note was in Margie's possession that it should have been in the case file.
Mhm.
Now, the original investigator said the original note was in the missing case file and he never gave it back. That's what the original investigator says. But yet, Margie produced
Margie
it.
has it.
Jeff Valenis is the other cold case investigator who worked with Wendy when they reopened the case in 2006. Donnie goes to see him. They have a normal exchange, but then they get outside and they're on a hot mic. And this
Mhm.
dude tells Donnie that Margie is lying her ass off. Ron did this. And he says there's a connection that Ron had through the police department who may have gotten him the file. And he said Margie had dental records, even that the dental office swears they turned over to the police.
Right.
Okay. So that's
So
episode one.
the case file went missing.
Mm-hmm.
Margie thought that Ron had it. Why would he have it? And then it magically shows up again.
Yes. And keep in mind, a lot of people are going to say, like, Margie's not confronting Ron. Margie's,
Mm-mm.
we see her emailing him later and it's very polite. It's very,
Mhm.
again, if this man beat her, which we don't know, but there's a strong indication,
Mhm.
that would explain her very detached behavior from him.
Mhm.
She's
For
scared of
sure.
him.
She's scared
She
of him, so
knows what he's capable of.
she's gonna do anything she can to not poke the bear.
Yeah, she knows what he's capable of, and that's a learned behavior.
Mhm.
Okay. So episode 2 starts with Margie sitting down with the police, and Steven is begging her to tell the truth. This is when she has the immunity.
Yeah. That
And
was so sad.
it was so sad, and she insists she doesn't know anything. And she's like, I understand that I did all the wrong things, but I didn't have my wits about me 22 years ago. That's what she says.
Right.
Then she
And
says, I didn't write the note, I didn't leave it in her room, and I didn't help Ron move the body.
that when she said that, I was like, just the way she said that, I didn't help him move the body.
Right. Yep.
Something about that made me go, the fact that you're referring to your daughter as the
As the
body.
body. I know. I said the same thing to my mother. I said she
Yeah.
has such a detachment from her daughter.
Uh-huh.
It's troubling.
It is.
So Wendy's like, oh, so he moved the body? And then the most damning thing here, and we referenced this, is that Wendy Reed at one point calls Margie 7 times.
And she doesn't answer.
She doesn't answer, and instead of calling her back, she emails Ron. Now, Wendy brings up a good point in this interrogation room. She's like, I could have been calling you to tell you we found your daughter.
Yep.
But
I
instead, she emails Ron and says, I need to talk to you before I call them back.
Right, because he's running this whole show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's ugh.
Steven gets frustrated and they leave. Now the filmmakers interview Margie and we see her getting a package from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, whatever. I don't know. The phone rings, she jumps and she says she always answers. She's always waiting for her daughter to call.
Yet she didn't answer 7 times.
Yeah. We see, she says Stephen, now we get Stephen's backstory a little bit. Stephen was born in 1968 in August. And Ron got called up to Vietnam in October, and he was a door gunner on a helicopter, and he never talked about it. None of them did. None
No.
of them did. And he came home with a Bronze Star and got his degree in accounting, and then Jennifer was born. And she says that Ron had a distanced relationship from Steven because when he came back, Steven was a toddler. Now, I had babies and I had toddlers.
Yeah.
And the way she talked about it, I guess I expected that Ron missed 5 years of his life, but he only missed like
A
18
year and a
months.
half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you're a
And
baby and a toddler, that doesn't,
no,
nothing
and
happens.
okay, maybe the first day he showed up back in the house, he didn't immediately bond with Steven, and Steven wasn't like, "Daddy," because he didn't know that
Sure.
he was too
Sure.
little when he left to be able to put that together. But after a couple days, you're back.
Toddlers warm up real quick. I mean,
Yeah.
that's,
And
part of the
particularly
problem.
if you're a father who's super psyched to see your baby, that baby's gonna feel that energy and go straight into it.
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
She says Ron was always on Steven's back about something and he had a short fuse. And she goes, "You just knew when to." And then she pauses and she goes, "You just knew when to stop."
Mhm.
And then she says, "If you woke him up, you did it from a distance because you didn't know if he was going to come up swinging." I mean, this is PTSD.
This is classic PTSD.
Yes,
Everything of this makes total sense to me of how she behaved with him in the house.
I agree. So
Yeah.
Donnie is now walking through some scenarios and says, okay, so here's Donnie's take on this. He says, if someone were to come through the gate, they would have had to call the house
Mhm.
and the phone didn't ring. However, could Jennifer have been on the phone and it was a call waiting
Call
situation?
waiting. Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
God,
Then he's
I forget
like,
about call waiting.
I know. Then he's like, well, the pan, because someone's like, oh, could he have parked on the street and came in? Oh, the Pandos residence is a mile from the road. Nobody's gonna do that in 27-degree weather. Have you met teenagers?
Yeah, they'll do crazy stuff all the time, or if someone wants to do something nefarious, they're gonna do it.
We would think nothing of
Mm-mm.
standing out in the woods for 3 hours around a keg when it was 27 degrees.
That's a great night because the beer stays cold.
Yes, forget it. Walking to our girlfriend or boyfriend's house, you think a mile's gonna deter us?
Right, now.
No.
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm. So Donnie's a little out of touch with Gen
Little
X
bit.
teenagers, in my opinion. Then, he says he can't get past the note, keeps tripping everyone up, and the details indicate it was either someone who knows Jen or Jen herself. Like, and then he brings up a really good point. Now you're 15-year-old Amanda, okay?
Yes.
You're gonna
Yes.
run away.
Yes.
Do you think about canceling a doctor's appointment?
The doctor's appointment tripped me up as well, and the fact that she
Mm-hmm.
took nothing with her.
Just her purse.
That's it.
That's it. Not her contacts, nothing.
Nothing. If she's there,
Not
if
changing
really she's
clothes.
like, "I need to go away for 3 to 5 days," don't you at least have a backpack with a
You
sweatshirt
pack a
in it? I mean,
bag.
something.
But again, we don't know that she didn't take something with her. We're going on Margie and Ron's word.
Right. Right.
I mean, there could be a whole suitcase of clothes missing from that house and we wouldn't know it
No. I'm not
because
sure they would
Margie's the
know it
one who
either.
said she took nothing with her.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I just wrote too, like a parent would understand I'm going to get charged if she misses this doctor's appointment. A kid is
Mhm.
not going to give shit about that.
No.
Okay.
No. At that age, I
So,
would have had no clue.
no. Sharon, in the meantime, called the parents. Sharon was the girl she was on the phone
Yep.
with. The parents say she's sick. They
First
just
time
keep
say she's
covering it.
sick, and then the second time she says she's out with her dad.
Now,
And
wouldn't you
Sharon
ask the
says,
friends?
right. Wouldn't, if Sharon's her best friend, wouldn't your first call be to Mother Sharon and be like, "Have you seen my kid?"
110%.
Yeah.
Yes. Hmm.
And
So now we meet Ron's second wife, Ruth Ann, and she has no patience for Ron. She hates him.
yeah.
Yeah. She
They're
claims the note was different and that he 100% wrote it. Now, I don't know what she meant by this.
yeah, I don't know what different meant. I mean, she clearly had some strong feelings about Ron. Not a
Yeah.
fan, but she had a protection from abuse order for him.
Yeah. And I admire her energy because she shows up for this interview with a box of evidence.
Oh, yeah. She's
She's like,
like,
"This is my box of evidence I've collected.
right. This is my proof that this man sucks.
This woman's a bunkie." I mean, she's
This
there,
woman
she's
is a
like,
bunkie.
I got these
I got all the
receipts.
receipts.
Here
Yep.
we go." So, she claims the note was different. She says he 100% wrote it. While they're together, he gets arrested for fraud. So don't forget that he's an accountant and he does some shady shit with some football players or something.
Yep.
She turns him in while he's on probation for having a firearm. He gets thrown in jail. She gets a PFA. Then he stalks her. So,
Mhm.
so now we meet Ron. Okay, now Ron looked
He
real
did not
different
look
than
like
the
what I
Nick
thought he would.
Tortelli in the
Yeah.
reenactment.
He did not look at all what I thought he would look like.
No, Ron believes that Tony Tobler did this because he
Mhm.
was dating Jennifer at the time, and
Yeah.
you always do look at the boyfriend. That's a thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the film crew's interviewing Ron, and before they interview, he's like, "I just want you to know before we set up, crime, sex, crime." Um, he's like, "I tell it straight. I tell it straight. I tell it how I have it. If you don't
Yeah.
like it, okay, dude."
Yeah.
Normally, when
Calm down.
someone's that intent that they're telling you the truth, they're a
They're lying.
bullshitter. Mhm.
Yeah.
So they ask him what happened that night, and he's like, "I don't know. We just went to bed. We went to bed and we woke up and she was gone." Like, he doesn't even talk about the fight.
No.
Nothing.
And she just
Total
gone.
lies. Because we have a corroborator to the fight.
Mhm.
Why would she be lying about that?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
She was on the phone. She heard it. So he says he went right out to the gate and asked if a car came, and they said no. He says he passed out flyers and went looking for Tony Tobler. And then he says Steven came to see him in prison in 2010. And the filmmaker Cynthia is like, "Do you want to talk about that visit?" And he said, "Not particularly."
Yeah. So I wonder what happened in that. I'm guessing Steven just lit into him.
Well, that's the visit. Steven references it later. Here, I have it. Steven says during that visit, his father said, "Okay, hypothetically, if I hit
Yeah.
her and she fell and hit her head and died, would you want me to take the fall for your mother? Then I'll do it." Like, it was
Yeah.
so weird. At one point, when he fails his polygraph, Ron does, he admits it to investigators that he killed her. And he
Yeah.
says, "Get a plane and I'll show you where the body is." And then he retracts all of that.
Like, who says that about their
I know.
child? I mean, I
I
could
know.
sit here and go, I mean, I can tell you who's the guy? Jimmy, I could tell you where Jimmy Hoffa's body is. Come with me. Like, I can tell you that and
Yes,
laugh
yes.
about it. It's
But
not
you
my
couldn't do it, like,
child.
about your stepson.
No, God. Oh
No,
my
no,
God.
no.
I'd be
So,
oh.
the filmmakers arrange a call between Steven, Ron, and his new piece of shit wife, who I have no use for, thank you.
Oh, this woman sucked. I
She
hate her.
sucks. She
Yeah.
sucks. And she says she has the balls to say, "Why did Steven have her declared dead? He must know something." Like, in
Mhm.
other words, Steven killed her. Okay,
Right.
bitch, sit down.
Yeah. Sit down and shut up. And the fact that she kept being like, "Well, no, that's not what happened. That's not what happened. Your dad told me that's not what happened." Like, "Bitch,
Yeah,
you don't know. You weren't there.
yeah. Nope.
Stop. Go away."
Agreed. So now we have Jake Rice, and this is how episode 2 ends. Jake Rice is the new investigator who has
Mhm.
now picked up this case. He calls Steven, and guess what? We found the original case file. And
Dun, dun, dun.
BT Dubs, there were new leads in it. And
Right.
oh, by the way, we never had the original letter in evidence. So Margie never stole anything. And this mysterious file was at the bottom of the records room, which had been searched 3 times.
Times. Right.
And the case file says your parents were totally active and involved in this. Steven doesn't remember getting a call from his
Right.
parents through all this. And we learned that he went to school with Jennifer. He's of this friend group.
Mhm.
hmm
So is he
So,
friends with Tony Tobler?
so that's how episode 2 ends. And you're like, what the
What the
fuck?
hell?
He went to school with Tony Tobler. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. So in episode 3, we meet Butch Barr, Steven's lawyer, who
Loved him.
he's like a nice version of Mr. Burns, is what I have
Mhm.
here.
Yes. Yes.
And he just wants Steven to reconcile with his mother and get his life together. Okay,
It
dude.
has to be so sad to just watch Steven just battle these windmills over and over and over and be like, "Buddy,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, it's heartbreaking."
It's
Steven is in so
heartbreaking.
much pain, it is heartbreaking.
Mhm. So I'm gonna go through this quick because I realize
Okay.
I'm almost on an hour and we need to solve it. So okay.
Right.
So basically, now we get into the relationship between Tony Tobler and Jennifer. And if you recall, Tony Tobler is saying they casually dated.
Right. Not a big
Okay.
deal.
Hmm. Her friends are saying she was obsessed with him. They were in love with each other. They were obsessed
Mhm.
with each other. The Toblers, because Tony is not allowed to be interviewed alone, Corey is sitting right there looking
Oh,
at him.
Corey
Mhm.
is Corey rules that roost with an
She's
iron
on it.
fist.
She's
Yeah.
on it. He says they dated for a few months and then stopped, and that's, when no, he says Corey and him dated for a few months, then stopped, and that's when Tony and Jennifer dated.
Right, and then he went back with Corey.
Yep, and he was 2 years older than her. They were banging after school at the Pandos house cuz Margie didn't get home from work till 5,
Right.
and she got pregnant, and they had an abortion.
Fragante.
And
Yes.
immediately I'm like, "Okay, this is way more intertwined than we thought."
Yeah, this is not
Mhm.
just casually dating, going to the
No.
Roll-A-Rama.
Ron says he was shocked and pissed off, and Tony says Ron didn't like him because it was a major embarrassment for the family. Tony claims that the Pandos lived in this fancy development, which, I mean, I guess it was like a
It
little
looked
more
nice.
upper class. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and Tony lived in a trailer park, and for that, they didn't like him.
Mhm.
Tony says he dumped Jennifer for Corey, and she was real torn up. And she would do stuff to terrorize Corey, and she hated her. Now, that's corroborated by the friends. They're all like,
Yep.
oh, Jennifer hated Corey.
Yeah.
But we learn later they're still fucking around, and I'll get to that. The big event in this episode is that Lena, a Navy interrogator, has been brought in to determine if Margie's going to lie.
Yeah, I
So
love
she's
this.
she's like a human lie detector,
Yep.
essentially. And so they do the interview, and guess what? She doesn't think Margie's lying.
No.
She does not think that Margie knows more than she's saying she knows. And
Mhm.
some of the things Margie was saying in that interview were very touching and moving.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? She was like,
This
I see my daughter. I'll never forget that image of her the last time I ever saw her. Like, it was very.
this is a mother in pain.
So at
This
this
is a
point,
mother
I'm
in
like,
very real
okay,
pain.
maybe Ron killed her, wrote the
Mhm.
note, got rid of the body, and Margie knew nothing about it,
Yeah. I am
which
wondering
was
how the bedroom
plausible.
door got locked. Unless it was one of those that
Yeah.
you could lock it and then pull it shut and it would actually lock.
Well,
I don't know.
we only have their word that it was
And
locked.
it was locked, true.
Yeah. You really have to make the distinction between all the information that is funneled through the Pandos
Yeah, it's
parents
true.
because we don't know. So Mr. Burns now breaks down the polygraph and he says it turns out that Margie was deceptive about the dental appointment, but because she couldn't remember. And he says the reason that polygraphs are inadmissible and not trustworthy is they often misread confusion for deception.
Right. Which
And
makes
they were,
sense. And 14 year or 20 some odd years later to go,
thank you.
"Oh, what's her dentist appointment? Was it a dentist appointment or a doctor's is it Friday or third?" I knew I had to cancel an appointment for her. My mother
Right.
couldn't tell you what day my dental appointment was 30 some
Dude,
odd years
I
ago.
had to call my mother and say, how old were my kids when they had the tubes put in their ears? You know, that major surgery they had when they were little
Right.
because I couldn't remember.
Yep.
So, yeah,
Yep.
I get it. So, another thing I want to say here is we thought they took the polygraphs right away when she was missing and they didn't. They took
No.
them when they reopened the case in 2006. So
Right.
it
So
was 20 years.
of course their memory is going to be sketchy.
Yes, of course. So then we get to the handwriting analysis, and the producers are talking to the examiner who made this. He's
Mhm.
the criminal profiler dude. And he's like, "Look, this is a staged crime scene. Like it's clearly that is a thing." But he says from a profiling standpoint, you would need a lot of information, blah blah blah. So the director basically says, "Did you know the police were looking at Ron and Margie when you made this profile?" And he says, "Yes, they were the only suspects."
Yep.
Which is why he pointed to the mother and
Right.
father.
That's all we
Mhm.
got.
Yep. The director says, "You know this is Steven's smoking gun." And the dude is like, "Well, I guess Steven's fucked up because he hates his," or he goes, "I guess he's shit out of luck because he hates his parents and his parents hate him." Like, this dude did not know
Right.
what to say.
No, he was like, "Okay, great. I'll fill space now."
Then Jake Rice, the new investigator, comes in. He's like, "Well, your note says if the note was fabricated, blah blah blah." And he's going, "We don't know that Jennifer wasn't around to help this." So everything Steven has based his assumption on
Is now in
has
question.
been called into question. Okay. So now we have Carrie Hendricks. So now we're going to start looking at other suspects.
Yep.
Carrie Hendricks is the dude that they were babysitting for, who bought them alcohol, and he 100% did.
Oh, yeah. That
Okay.
guy was sketch as all get out.
Single dad with a
Right.
1-year-old son, 2 15-year-old girls at his house, Gen X. He's 100% buying them alcohol.
Buy them alcohol, yeah, and hoping that they'll hook up with him.
Wendy Reed, yes. Wendy Reed says his name was given to her in 2006, but she couldn't find him. He'd been convicted. He has a record, like a pretty crazy record. Donnie likes him for this because he has a few assault charges, and he calls one of Carrie's victims and gets like weirdo Robin. Okay, so Robin is one of Carrie's quote victims. Okay. She says, "He tried to grab me, and I said to him, 'I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth.'"
That made me laugh so freaking hard.
I was dying. I was like, wait, what? What just happened?
Of all the things that someone says when they're trying to be grabbed, "I rebuke you in the name of not even just, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ." That would be ridiculous enough to begin with. "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth."
So then like Donnie says, "I could have been." Okay, so they track him down and they're interviewing him. He's real rough looking.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Real, I think he was a meth addict because all the teeth are gone.
There was a lot of, there was a mouth hole
Mm-hmm.
situation, faux show.
It's not good. So at the time of disappearance, he said he had a 1-year-old son and he needed help. And he says so they ask him about the original investigation. He's like, "Oh, I was one of the number one suspects." And then he says the abduction with Robin, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, was that he was trying to rob her and get her purse because he was on cocaine at the time.
Right.
And he thought that he was trying to push her in the car. And so they assumed it was a sexual assault. He says he considered himself a father figure to these girls and never gave them a lick of alcohol. Never would.
Liar, liar, pants on fire.
He says that Ron was all over him and even came over there. And he said something real curious about Ron because he goes, Ron came over and instead of going, "He was a nice man," he goes, "He was a nice looking man."
Yeah, like,
okay. Should we leave you two alone?
Yeah, do you guys need a moment?
Steven is not convinced. He still thinks it's his dad. And at the end, we see Jake calling to say he's having some testing done on the case. Now, episode 4.
Right. By the way, that's where I thought the whole thing ended until I was smart enough to look it up. And I don't know why it didn't show up. And I was like,
what happened?
But thank God I looked. Otherwise I'd be like, and we're done. Oh, wait.
So now Margie, I don't know why I keep calling her Margie. She's Margie.
She's Margie.
Is agreeing to undergo hypnosis. So she's undergoing hypnosis.
She'll do everything, which is what
everything.
Everything.
Her story does not change. The episode focuses now more on Steven and Margie's relationship. We see Steven getting married like on some cliffside in like Switzerland. It's amazing.
Right. With his beautiful daughters and his beautiful wife.
And the director is showing Margie a video of it because the directors were there. I wrote Steven has really great art in his house.
Yes, he does.
That. He says he believes law enforcement knows what this has done to him and his mother, and if she's ruled out, they would have told him, right? Nope.
Nope. They don't care.
He calls Jake and he's like, "Look, Jake, are my parents still suspects? Like, what's going on here?" And Jake says, "Your parents did not help themselves. Like, their behavior was super weird. And I can't rule them out. So they are still in the mix." That's what he said. But he's like, "I'm getting some handwriting analysis done." Now Steven hires his own handwriting analysis.
Right.
I appreciate Steven's energy because he's like, "I can't wait for this shit. I'm
Right.
doing
I
my own."
got things to do, places to
Mhm.
go, people to
Mhm.
see. We're
Mhm.
figuring this out, and I have enough money to throw at it, so I'm going to find
Yep.
my own people.
Yep. So this handwriting analysis rules out the father and the mother, and she even ruled out Carrie Hendricks, which how they got his handwriting, I have no idea. Maybe like,
Right.
please can I buy like It's Always Sunny, please can I buy 2 crack rocks for $50,000? But guess who's back in? Tony Tobler is
Tony
back
Tobler's
in.
back in. Yep.
Mhm. She said it's not 100%, but like he's under suspicion.
Mhm.
Now Jake Rice calls Ron. We don't see this. This happens off camera and tells him they're pursuing new leads and he's pretty much exonerated.
Mhm.
So the filmmakers, Ron must have told them.
Yeah.
And he tells Ron that there was a piece of the info in the file, the original file, that was overlooked. And it's a one-armed man named Charlie May. And I'm like, is this the fugitive? What is
Yeah,
happening here?
exactly. That was my same thought as well. Like, are we gonna be getting Harrison Ford in on this? Because I'm
Yes.
down for that.
And this guy had a connection with Tony Tobler.
Mhm.
So the filmmakers also learned there's a secret grand jury, and Tony
Right.
Tobler and Charlie May are
Sure.
both there. No
Yep.
one tells Steven this.
Nope.
Okay, now the film jumps to 8 months later. Jake calls Steven to ask if mom has any other writing from Jennifer or Tony. They need more Tony.
Mhm.
Guess what, Amanda?
She magically has a box of all of Jennifer's letters that I can just pull right out, and there's 50 notes in there from Tony.
That not only gives the handwriting sample, but provides much context about their relationship.
Yes, that it
Oh
was
my
not
God.
casual.
Whew. Okay. This is insane to me. The directors tell Steven about the grand jury, and he's real pissed off that they didn't tell him earlier. He's like,
Mhm.
I wish somebody told me this. Looking
Yeah.
at you. And then Steven calls Jake to tell him, I found the letters. And he asks what led them to Tony. And Jake says the original file led them to finding an individual who corroborated the theory that Tony had something to do with this. Now, here's what is contained in the newly found Jennifer and Tony letters.
Mhm.
February 1986, a year before she goes missing. Tony is so in love with her, he says he wants to buy her a promise ring and wants to marry her.
Yeah. Which,
Again,
God, so 14 years old.
again, Tony said they were dating casually.
Right. Tony has totally lied about their
Mhm.
relationship.
June
Why?
6th, still love letters. And at one point he says, if you cheat on me, I would kill you and whoever it was.
Mhm.
Okay. Now that could be something just a teenage boy says. Fine.
Right.
But
It
September
if
20th. Go ahead.
if she hadn't gone missing, I would just look at that and go, "That's a thing a
Right.
teenage boy says." But now she's gone missing.
Mm-hmm. September 24th, after they break up, after the abortion. Supposedly he's back with Corey.
Right.
He writes that he's been calling her and she won't return his calls, and where is she? October 1986. She writes that her arms have bruises from when he threw her on the bed and he needs to stop throwing her around like some whore. And she says he is lying to her about his relationship with Corey. So they were totally sleeping together behind
They were
Corey's
still
back.
banging.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
And I want a camera pointed on Corey's face when she sees this part of the documentary.
I do too,
Hmm.
because ooh,
Although I think there is a world where Corey's involved in this, and we'll talk about that.
okay.
So Steven watches the footage of Tony being interviewed by the producers, and they ask Tony, where did the rumors of Jennifer having mental health problems start? Was it from your breakup? And he laughs and he's like, how long do y'all think we dated? Because it wasn't
Right.
long.
It wasn't there's nothing anybody would be upset about.
Like,
Yeah.
dude, I know people who got pregnant and had abortions in high school. That is a big thing. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, there's a lot of complicated
It's a
feelings.
life-changing emotional
Yes,
situation.
I'm sure that this girl wasn't like, "Oh, let's just get an abortion. Oh, you go date Corey, it's fine."
Right.
No,
No.
no.
Mm-mm.
So they went through something. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So Steven's wife says this has been torture on Steven. Like it's made him question everything. And she's like, but I still have this nagging feeling like that it's the parents. Like something
I
is
liked
still
his
not
wife.
right there.
Yeah.
I did too.
I like her.
So now we meet Charlie May.
Oh, girl, let's talk about Charlie
Woo!
May.
Woo!
Woohoo!
Did you see the clip I put in the Little Miss Recap Facebook friends group?
I did. Yeah.
Did you or did you not, as a Gen Xer, have people you knew who lived in the woods that you met and you hung out with?
I did
And they
not,
were usually
but
adults.
right. I did not have that experience myself, but there's nothing about that experience that
Mhm.
rings remotely weird to me
Yep.
because that would
Mhm.
have happened in the mid
We
80s.
we knew which of these guys lived where and who would buy us beer if we gave them 5 extra bucks.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like
Mhm.
oh,
So
with his Trump hat on or Trump t-shirt on or whatever it was. Oh god.
so he had a Trump hat on,
Oh
and he
yes.
is in Florida, so
Sure.
and he had a Hershey's, Pennsylvania
Yeah, there was a
shirt on.
Hershey, Pennsylvania t-shirt. Yes. I was like, there's
So
so much weirdness going on with this dude.
so he has a Trump hat on and a "I helped kids with cancer" Hershey shirt on.
Right. Because those
So,
two
yeah,
things aren't
real
at
mixed
odds at all.
messages. Mhm.
Right.
So so they meet at a hotel room. And Charlie tells Steven that he and Tony met while he was smoking pot and doing his martial arts on the railroad tracks in the woods.
Sounds right.
And they were just associates smoking weed. And he says he knew Jennifer and he had met her when Tony introduced her as his fiance.
Right.
Interesting.
But at 15, well, I guess he was 17, but still.
Yeah, he
Tony's
was
2 years older.
17. Yeah.
16 or 17. Still
And
weird.
don't forget, I mean, in the 80s, it was not unusual to get married at 20. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So Tony called him one day and asked, "How do you get rid of a body if you need to?" And
Right.
he goes, "I just told him, well, you put it in a barrel of acid, which you can obtain from an open construction site, and you can obtain the acid where they clean brick at all of these." Like, it was real specific.
Yeah, okay. I am a 50-year-old woman. I would not know the answer to any of these questions.
Well, I've watched enough true crime, I think that I can say you can dissolve a body.
I
I've
would know
watched
acid,
Breaking
but I
Bad.
wouldn't necessarily know where to get the
I wouldn't know
supplies.
where to get it. I would
Right.
know that you could probably get a 55-gallon drum on a construction site. Only
Right.
because my husband's in construction.
Yes.
But I would not know
But
where you can get
otherwise,
that acid.
I
I'd
have
be
no
like, I
idea.
don't know. Go to Home Depot? I don't know where they sell it.
Hi, do you have the acid that dissolves human bodies? Yes, ma'am. Aisle 6, 3/4 of the way down on the right.
So then he says Tony told him eventually that he got in a fight with Jennifer. He hit her, she fell, she hit her head, and she was dead. Then Charlie says he hadn't heard from him for a while. And then Tony called him a few weeks later and said the problem was, quote, taken care of.
Right. I want
Charlie
to know the
says,
date of that call.
I know, me too. Charlie says, I thought this was a joke, so I didn't say anything at the time. And he also says he didn't share this information with the police in 1987 because he goes, and I'm quoting him here, because everything, and he points to his head, because everything was so crazy and still is.
Mhm.
So I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I have a feeling there's a lot more people living in Charlie May's head than just Charlie May. I have a feeling
So-
Charlie May has some brain friends. Brain friends, that's my new phrase.
The film crew asks if he's told anyone else this ever, and he's like, no. Then he goes, "Sir, would you mind if I could pray with you?" And Steven's like, "Sure, why not?
Sure,
Jesus
whatever."
Christ of Nazareth."
Yeah, the prayer. I was like, with your
Oh my
Trump hat and your Hershey's t-shirt, now we're going to pray. Sure.
So,
Sure we are.
Obviously, Steven thinks this is true. The filmmaker's like, he doesn't seem super
Reliable.
super credible to us.
Right.
Then we have this scene where Steven says, I feel relieved that my parents might not be guilty, but at the same time, I've caused so much hurt on an already tragic situation. I carry a lot of guilt with me for that. Then they pan to Margie, and Margie says, the filmmaker says, does he owe you an apology? And Margie says, absolutely not, no. I do not need an apology from Steven. What he is doing fills my heart, but it breaks my heart at the same time. And she says he doesn't need to do anything. All he needs to do is walk through that door.
Yeah.
And
to me is the
was
ultimate
sobbing.
mother.
I was sobbing.
That rang so true to me as a mother.
Mhm,
Like all he has to do is come back and we're good. Yeah.
Yeah, because I cry at everything. So
Yes.
even reading this gives me chills. Like, ugh.
I did not cry because I have a stone cold heart, but yes.
That's like Mary Payne. Every
Yeah.
time we're recapping something, I'm like, "I'm sobbing," and she's like,
Oh,
"Nope, nope."
yeah. Mary Payne and I are the same. I do not cry at most things that people cry at.
I cry at everything, it's ridiculous. So, later we find this no okay, so later Jake calls, and
Yeah.
he's like, "There has been a break here. I've gone through all these notes, and I found a note that is dated February 9th, 1987 at 7:42 PM, which is the night before she goes missing."
Right.
I'm gonna read you the note. You give me your impression
Yes, ma'am.
when I'm done reading this.
Okay.
Get into 15-year-old Amanda's head. Okay.
I'm
All
here.
right. Tony. Hey, what's up? Like, I'm kind of imagining you're at Corey's right now. Anyways, I just wrote to tell you that you should not have lied to me. I'm not sure what I'm going to do to hurt you the way that you hurt me by lying to me, but I can assure it won't be pleasant. I think I'm going to do you a very, very big favor. Just don't ask what, because I'll only tell you when I feel the time is right. But I will tell you this, it will do you a very big favor, at least in my eyes, which could be deceiving you. Well, just thought I'd say you'll pay for lying to me, Jennifer. Thoughts?
It sort of made me it was the first time I really wondered, did she leave on her own and kill herself?
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
Because a
That was the
15-year
first
old
time.
girl is going to be like, I'll do you the favor and I'll fucking make myself disappear.
Right, and now you don't have to
Hmm.
deal with this.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I really genuinely thought, what if she killed herself?
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
what if she just then I'm like, could she have disappeared and framed him for it?
Right. And could she have could she be living in, like,
I don't think she's alive.
I
I
don't think she's
think
alive either.
because Margie said there was a shady truck stop near them and blah, blah, blah. And I think if she did leave on her own, which is entirely possible,
Mhm.
she probably was found by someone who was a
Had
piece of shit
nefarious intent.
and
Yeah.
did something. So Steven has a different read on the letter. He's like, she was going to bust him for a lie.
Mhm.
I didn't get that impression.
No,
Mm-mm.
because that wouldn't be doing him a favor.
It's the doing him a favor
Favor.
that, yes. Yep.
Yeah.
So the results are in. The examiner says they cannot rule Tony out. In fact, it kind of points to Tony as the
Mhm.
author of the letter. Then we get this whole thing where they're testing the letter for DNA. Um, and that's all inconclusive
Right,
because
it's been too long.
everybody's touched that fucking letter.
Right, it's been too
Hmm.
long, and there's been no chain of custody on this letter, so anything that comes off of it, I don't to me, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
We could
I
have
agree.
Tony's, like, saliva all over it, and it'd be like, "Well, everyone else has touched this, so who the
Agreed.
hell knows?"
We see Steven chatting with Wendy Reed about so in order to get Tony's DNA for the letter, they needed an affidavit which will lay out probable cause. So
Mhm.
Steven goes and he gets a copy of the affidavit from the public records at the courthouse, and he gives it to Wendy Reed. And Wendy Reed's like, Charlie May is not reliable.
Right.
And I also don't think a 17-year-old kid would know where to find this stuff and kill someone and hide the body and lift a barrel of that weight. But he was a big kid. We saw pictures.
He was a big kid, but the moving a barrel of that weight, of the dead weight of a person, and, I
Yeah.
mean, it seemed like Jennifer was a pretty average sized person, so but still, let's call her 120 pounds. Sure,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Plus the weight of all the liquid, plus the weight of the barrel, that seems really
Hmm.
improbable that one person, even a real beefy person, could move it.
Could he have done this? Could he have brought Jennifer somewhere, had the barrel there, put her in it, put the acid in it, put the lid on it, and pushed it off a cliff?
Sure, that's possible.
Yeah. They need to find her body, is what they
Yeah.
need.
Yeah, that's the only way they're ever gonna truly solve this, is to find her body.
So another thing I want to say that I forgot is they went through all those notes again from Tony and Jennifer, and Tony makes reference to Charlie May several times,
Mhm.
almost in like an alarming way. At one point, he says he's crying about Charlie. I don't know what
Yeah,
that's
like,
about.
his attachment to Charlie seemed real
Hmm.
sketchy.
Charlie's our Junior. We used to have this guy named Junior.
Okay.
Had like a studio apartment somewhere. Was probably 40. and just used to let us all come over and drink.
'Cause
All
that's
kids
not
of
at
all
all
ages
weird.
went to juniors. Yeah.
Oh
And then
god.
one day, I'll never forget, one day it was just me and my girlfriend, and he took out a gun, and he was like,
Oh,
"Oh, I wanna
shit.
show you my gun," and I was like, "We're outta here, and that's it, we're never going back," and we
You
never
never went
went
back to
back to
juniors.
juniors.
Good.
Nope.
Jesus,
Nope.
that's scary.
Yeah. So, this is how it ends now. The DA calls Steven, and he says, "BT Dubs, I should have told you a few years ago that your mother and father are no longer suspects on this case.
Right. Like, oh
Whoops,
god.
my bad."
Whoopsie
Mhm.
daisies.
Steven says he wants to meet his mother privately and will never tell her what Charlie said because it's just too
It's
much.
awful. It's too
Mhm.
much. Yeah, I wouldn't tell her either.
He pulls up in his Porsche and has an off-camera chat with Margie, and we see them embrace at the door, and again, I cry.
Yeah.
The DNA comes back inconclusive. Pretty much they can't prove anything. They can't go forward. And Steven says at the end, a teenager does not just get up and walk out of life. It's just the not knowing that I'll have to learn to accept. And then
Yeah.
we learn like no one has been charged and her case remains open. And that's it.
That's
That's the
it.
miniseries or
We
the
have no
documentary.
idea. Yeah, we still have no idea.
All right. So let's go through a few scenarios.
Talk to
Okay.
me.
And you play devil's advocate. I'll lay
Okay.
out the scenario
Okay.
and you punch holes in it.
Got it.
So Tony and Corey are involved.
Yeah.
Tony comes over. He's able to get Jen out of the house. Does he write the note maybe? With Jennifer there or
Maybe.
with Corey there? But
With
then again, how would they know about the doctor's appointment? Jennifer
Right.
has to be alive.
Jennifer has to be alive somehow to say the doctor's appointment. If
Yes.
it would have been so interesting if the mother had been like, she didn't even have a doctor's appointment.
I know.
That would
I
have been
know.
interesting, but she confirms that there was some sort of appointment that
Mhm.
had to be
Mhm.
canceled.
Yeah.
I had never really
So
considered
poke
Corey
holes in
being
this.
involved.
Mhm.
Um,
That could be why they're still married. They got that trauma bond going.
right. I mean, there's definitely something creepy in their marriage.
Mhm.
Of all the theories, actually, that's probably the one I have the most difficulty pulling holes in based on the evidence that we have.
Yeah.
And whatever Jennifer said to him. Now, I wonder, I wish we knew the phone records of the house that night.
I know. I
Did she
know.
talk to somebody other than Sharon? Who knows?
I don't know, but how would her leaving with Tony? Okay, so here's another question.
Okay.
The note that was written the night before that says, I'm doing you a big favor, blah blah blah. Did he see that note?
Did he
Like,
tell her to write that?
but like would she have had time to I'm assuming they're exchanging these notes at school. Would they have
Right.
had time to have school that day and then he gives it back? Maybe. If she
Maybe.
writes it on a Thursday night, they go to school Friday. They exchange it then. How does she get the note back? Is the weird part.
Well, the thing is she writes it within hours of her disappearing.
No, she
They
wrote it the night before.
Did she write it February 9th or February 8th?
She wrote it February 9th, and they said she went missing February 10th. Let me see. I'm going to
That's the
just look
morning.
this
That's
up.
the day they discovered. The night of February 9th is when she disappears.
Okay, well, that note was written
At
February
7 o'clock
9th.
at night. Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Because you're right. I was hung up a little bit on that as well.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think February 9th. So could she have wrote it that morning in school?
Potentially. Now, the time said 7:42. Did it say P or A or just
PM.
7:42?
PM.
PM. So then she didn't write it at school. If we're going to take the time, if she's going to put the
You're
time on
right.
there, that note never made it to school.
Right.
It was in her notebook.
Yeah.
Was she going to give it
But
to him
it
the
gives
next
us
day? Yeah.
so again, it does not I never looked at that note as being evidence against Tony. I looked at that note as being an insight into where she was.
Yep.
So I don't think it matters. I think we know that this is where she was with this.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And their
did she
relationship was
leave
much bigger than Tony let on. So we know he's lying.
so did she leave on her own? Is there a world in which the parents still did what are your thoughts? What is your theory that you think happened?
I think if almost anything, it is more likely than not that she left on her own more and more. Um, if I feel like they've done enough to exonerate the parents, and yet I'm still not sold on the father not being involved. I can buy Margie's not involved.
I
Um,
could buy that too, I think.
and doesn't know anything.
I think we
Um,
could buy that. Yeah,
yeah,
let's say
Margie's
that is
good.
solved.
Well,
Margie's
Margie's
out of
good,
the loop.
and I'm
Okay.
glad she and Steven have reconnected.
Yeah. I heard an interview. Kate Casey interviewed this filmmaker and Steven.
Oh, and did
It's
we
a good
learn
interview.
anything?
And
Okay,
Steven
I'll
said
listen to
that
it.
he's very close to his mother now and she has a good relationship with the daughters.
Oh, good, good. I'm
Mhm.
glad. I'm glad for that healing for all of them.
Mhm.
Um, I can't rule out that the father did it. I just can't.
I
He's
can't
just so
either.
scary to me and so menacing, and I
And the
feel like
fact that he's gone on to have abusive behavior as an adult
right
is
outside of
troublesome.
this, yeah.
Mhm.
Um, so it to me, it's one of three things. Tony did it, but again, then how does he deal with the body, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? How does he get the body out of there? All of this.
Yeah.
Basically, I can't I can't get to a world where she died in that bedroom because how do we get the body out of there with no sign of anything? Let's
Okay,
say she did
here's
fall and
the
hit her
question.
head. There's no blood around the room. Like,
I'm going to poke a hole in our theory that she left on her own.
okay,
You're 15, you're leaving on your own. Why disguise your handwriting?
yeah. And why not bring anything with you?
Yeah, why not just write the note in your handwriting?
Right,
Somebody
right.
else was there. Somebody else was
Somebody
there.
else was
And I
there.
think it was Tony.
Yeah. And maybe he showed up and he was like, let's go, let's do this. I'm dumping
Let's go
Corey.
meet
I'm here for
Charlie.
you.
Yeah.
Let's go meet
Yeah.
Charlie. Let's go get high with Charlie. By the way, Charlie then
Mhm.
goes, what if Charlie killed her?
Oh, I think Charlie was way more involved
Yeah,
than he's making it out to be.
agreed. I- If she did not walk out of there on her own, I think the most likely thing is that Tony is involved. And I'm totally with you on the fact that Charlie's definitely involved in that too.
Mhm.
If Tony did it, Charlie's absolutely a big accomplice to this.
Yeah, because another thing about these guys who live in the woods that we all knew as Gen X teenagers, they would do this. They would
They
help
would
you
do
hide
this.
a body. I mean, all
That's
you had to do was
right.
give them a case of beer. They were there.
Right. Exactly.
So,
And clearly these 2 were already, smoking weed in the woods and all that. He was
mhm.
already having
Mhm.
a non-boundaried relationship with teenagers, we'll put it that way.
And
Um,
I think Corey knows about it.
yeah, I think she does too, because she was real intent of watching everything Tony
Mhm.
said in that interview. There was not a moment where Tony was gonna be in front of a microphone without her,
No.
period.
And at one point, one of
And she
them
but the whole time she's like, "This is no big deal."
I know,
She was like,
like, not a big deal,
she
and
was forced easy breezy.
yes, and Tony's cockiness with how long do you think we all
Yeah.
dated?
Yeah, how big of a relationship
Like,
do you
dude,
think
you
this
got
was?
this girl pregnant and you had an
Right.
abortion. That is something. That is not nothing.
Mm-mm.
Um,
No.
I just think that I think Ron's a piece of shit, but I don't know if he did it. This case is maddening.
This is because every time you start down a path, there's a way to debunk that path on all of
And
them
it all revolves around
around
the
that note.
note.
Yep. You figure
That
out who wrote the
note.
note, and the fact that they
Okay.
said they can't rule out that it was Tony's handwriting.
Okay, let's take this scenario.
Okay.
Who produced the note? Who gave us the note? The Pandos
Yes.
parents. What if they wrote that note just to delay? Like they didn't kill her, but they discovered she was missing. We
Mhm.
already know from Tony like they're big on showiness, don't want to
Yep.
be embarrassed, don't want to break, oh fuck, our daughter ran away again. You know what I mean?
Right. After being pregnant, we already got her an abortion.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
Uh,
what if they I don't know.
I don't know.
That's a
I feel
slim
like
chance, but
it is. I feel like the handwriting experts have been pretty definitive that it was neither of them who wrote the note.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I
Where
feel
two
relatively
independent
secure there.
handwriting people think that Tony might have.
Right. Right. More
Mhm.
people are pointing to him.
Because the important thing to remember is they have Tony's handwriting from then,
Yes, not
and
I
that's
mean,
what
my
they're
handwriting
comparing
at
it to.
15 is very different than my handwriting now,
Mhm,
for sure.
mhm. Right, I
Um
don't use hearts to dot my I's anymore.
You
I
don't?
don't make my M's like the Metallica M anymore.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I had a very, like, specific handwriting in, like, middle school, and I'm sure it was based on someone else's handwriting that I thought looked
Mhm,
cool, so I was, like,
mhm,
trying to imitate
mhm.
that.
So
Yeah,
I
so the
think it's Tony, and I
yeah,
think Corey knows, and I think Charlie knows,
yeah.
and I
I think those
think
3 are the key to it. I'd love to p well, I mean, they're not admissible, but I would love to put Tony and Corey on a lie detector and
oh,
see
yeah.
what happens,
And
or
here's the
put them
thing
with
too.
that body language expert person and
I
see what they
agree.
say about them.
The human lie detector, the Navy lie
Yes.
detector.
Yeah.
Here's another thing. If somehow Corey had or Tony got a hold of that note that I'll do you a favor, blah, blah, blah. Or if she even imparted to him those ideas, he
Yep.
may have said, I'm coming over to talk right now
Yeah.
and let me come over and talk. And that's how he got there. And
Yeah.
let's go somewhere. Let's go away for a few days. Let's talk about this.
Let's figure
We'll
this
we'll
out.
write a note to your parents so they don't call the police because I don't want to get in trouble. Let's
Right.
figure this out. Let's go. You know what I mean?
He gets her out.
And that's that.
And it would had to have been after he talked, I mean, because we know she was alive when she talked to Sharon at like 10:30 at night.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was
Mm-hmm.
that because that's why Ron came in yelling at her. It's past the time when you're allowed to be on the phone. Totally
Yeah.
real, normal thing. At that age, my mother
Yep.
also at like 10:30 would have been like,
Yes.
we're done with the phone for
Yeah.
the night.
That's
Um,
another thing, guys. They gave her the master bedroom on the ground floor with its own sliding door.
yeah, that was also
Weird.
strange to me as well.
Yeah.
But whatever. I don't know.
So I think
Maybe
that's what happened. I think she freaked out on him. I think he was like, I'm going to come over. He told her what he needed to tell her to get her out of the house.
yeah.
Let's run away together. Let's be together. Let's go to Charlie's for a few days. Don't take
I ju
anything. Let's leave this note to throw your parents off.
I wish we had phone logs of that night. I feel like
I
that would
know.
also tell us a lot as well.
I
Was there
know.
an incoming or outgoing call to Tony?
I think because their house backed up to all those woods, I
Mhm.
think they just went in and out through the woods.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
we
for
we know
sure.
Charlie lived in the woods, so,
Yeah.
over
It's
there.
easy. Yeah, getting in and out of that development, the fact that there was a guard, that it was a gated
Yeah.
community, all that tells me is that someone didn't drive up. That's the only
Yes.
thing it tells you. Someone did
Yes.
not bring a car there to get her.
And again,
But
we're only going on Ron's although the original investigators probably asked
I'm sure
yeah,
they would have to
hopefully.
have.
Oh, that's another
Hopefully.
thing. Wendy Reed is like, "Isn't it odd that this file just reappeared?"
Randomly reappeared. Yeah,
Yep.
that's who had the file, because someone had it. It wasn't
Mhm. Mhm.
missing. They went through that room 3 times before it, and then it
Yeah.
randomly showed up, and someone randomly went into that drawer, and it was randomly in the bottom in the back, like, mm-mm.
Mhm. And then all of a
And
sudden, all
and
guns blazing at Tony.
and Tony has lived in that community his whole life. It's not
Mhm.
weird to think he's got many buddies potentially in the police department.
Yeah, but this would
Um,
hurt him, not help him. Like,
yeah,
he would want that file gone.
he would. I don't know. Maybe
Because that
someone had to
file
change
coming
his heart.
back what if Jake Rice was Tony what if Tony was Jake Rice's bully? And Jake
Oh.
Rice is like, "I'm gonna
Jake Rice is like,
manufacture some
"Fuck this
evidence."
guy. Fuck this guy." Hey, if I had a chance to
Mm.
frame my middle school bully for murder, I might not it would take me a moment to decide not to do that. Let's put it that way.
Oh, I would 100% do it. And then I like, as they were going to jail, then I'd be like, "Psych," and I would run away. Alright, girl. Well, I don't know if we've solved anything, but I think we've landed on
It's most
some a
likely
a
Tony.
plausible thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes the most sense with
That
what we
she
know.
left of her own free will with
With
Tony.
Tony.
'cause you know how teenagers are. He was probably like, "Let's run away together. Let's go to
Right.
Charlie's house for a week."
We'll
You
stay
know what I mean?
there. We'll figure out how we're gonna be
Mhm.
together. We'll get it
Mhm.
together. Charlie's a grown up. He'll help us out. Like,
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
at that age, you still sort of have magical thinking of what grown-ups can do to help you figure stuff out.
Sure.
Yeah.
Even Charlie doing his little martial arts on the tracks with the joint
Right.
hanging out of his mouth.
Mouth and one arm, but that's fine.
I don't even know.
Would like to see videos of Charlie High doing martial arts with his one arm on a train track.
I just
I feel
need
like
more
that's waiting
Charlie.
to be a music video. Yeah, we
I
need
need
more
more
Charlie.
Charlie. Yeah.
I don't really need
I
more
need
Charlie, but I need
less
more
Charlie
Charlie.
in my life, but more
More
Charlie on
Charlie on
film
this
to make fun of.
documentary. Yes,
Yes.
exactly. Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you for covering this with me.
My pleasure. Thank you for recommending it. It's an excellent documentary. It's slow. It
So
does not
good.
give you a pretty bow at the
Mm-mm.
end, but that's
Mm-mm.
okay. They don't all have to.
I am watching, I just want to recommend Murders at Starved Rock. So this was a
Oh,
documentary. It's 3 episodes long that came out, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. And
okay.
Starved Rock is a national park or state park outside of Chicago.
Okay.
And in 1960, 3 older women, like women in their late 50s, early 60s, were murdered there brutally
Oh god.
and in the middle of the day.
Ugh.
And they framed, listen to me. They got this guy Chester Weger who, they really liked, and there was a bunch of corrupt cops. I mean, it's 1960 Chicago. There's a bunch of
Nice, I like it.
corrupt cops and shit. And they put this guy away for life.
Okay.
And fast forward, the film is made by the prosecutor's son. So the
Interesting.
prosecutor puts Chester Weger away. This kid Steven grows up. Oh my god, his name is Steven,
Oh,
I think. This kid grows up like with Chester Weger as his boogeyman, and his dad is the
sure.
town hero. His dad put Chester Weger away.
Right.
And it was the case that made his father's career, and he's a very famous prosecutor because of this, and blah 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 blah. And now this kid, I don't know, maybe his name's Dave, I forget, but he's like, I'm starting to think Chester Weger may have been wrongfully convicted.
Oh, shit.
And he is on his own trying
Figuring this
to
out.
solve this case, and he's like clashing with his father,
Oh,
but
wow.
also nobody will talk to him because he's this prosecutor's son.
Sure,
It's
sure,
so
sure, sure.
interesting. It's so
Oh,
interesting.
I'll have to watch that.
Mhm.
I just also watched Take Care of Maya.
Oh, Stephanie was watching that. Oh.
Oh, it's so good, but it is so I almost cried. This
Oh,
cold, cold heart almost cried.
okay.
You will whale cry
Yeah, I
watching
don't know if
this.
I could do it. I heard
Good.
it's
It
like
was
about a
so good.
CPS situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it's
a
basically
Munchausen
about
mom.
medical kidnapping.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. And, it's absolutely heartbreaking but another beautiful documentary.
I might have to watch it. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
almost out Murders at the Road Rock.
Okay, I'll put
Give
that
it
on
a
my
shot.
list.
Yeah, it's really good because
Cool.
especially like learning how they solved murders in 1960, which was basically like a couple of bros just were like, "That's the guy."
Right, and now we're gonna do it. What channel is that on?
Max.
Okay.
It's on
Okay.
Max.
Yeah,
Okay, guys, we will be off next week. Amanda and I
for
are taking
sure.
a break to celebrate our independence.
Sure, we'll go with that.
Sure, we'll go with that. But anyway, it's 4th of July next week, so we won't be around, but we will be back the following week. We're not sure what, because we were like, we're gonna do White Lotus, and now we got sucked into all these true crime
Oh, the
docs.
documentary, and
So it might be
people
another
seem
one.
to love it, and you and I are loving it, so we might keep doing this.
I'm
We'll figure it
loving
out.
it.
I'm loving it too.
Loving it. Guys, come at us with some feedback. Let us know what you think happened here. I'll put a post in the Little Miss Recap Facebook friends group, which is going to be renamed
Oh, cool. Have we
to
come up with one?
Backdoor Friends. Backdoor Friends.
I
Mm-hmm.
like it. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Backdoor
Because
friends.
you're
That
all
that
my
is
backdoor
backdoor
friends.
friends.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to rename that group.
Not sex, crime, crime, sex.
Not Boss Hog and them
Boss
Duke
hog.
boys. So, so we are going to. I'm going to put a post in there, and I want to hear your theories. If
Yes,
you watch
please.
this, some of you started it, thought it was too slow, and So you're going to
I
listen to us.
encourage you to come back, but listen
It's
to us
good.
regardless.
It's good. Yeah. And give us a 5-star review if you like what you're hearing. That always helps
Please.
people find us. And do me a favor and just tell like 2 or 3 people about us.
Yeah.
In your life.
We don't need millions, but just a couple.
Pass a note.
And
Pass a note around.
hey, the fact that I found someone in the wild recommend us, I was like, oh,
that was great.
That was awesome.
Yep. All right, guys, thanks so much for listening. Amanda, tell everyone real quick where they can find you.
Instagram, Amanda Lipnack. Amy will link it in the show notes because she's good that way.
All right, and we'll see you guys later. Thanks for listening.
Take care, everyone.